Welcome to the Invincible Innovation Show, the podcast for changemakers. Hey everyone, welcome ladies and gentlemen to an extraordinary episode of Invincible Innovation. I'm your host, Mazor Kario, product design and AI expert, and today we explore the intersection of creativity and generative AI. In this episode, we have a special guest, AI entrepreneur, who will share insight on the future of generative video tools. Join us as we delve into the landscape of creative generative AI. Now, let's dive in with our guest. Hi, Leo.
Hi,
I'm so
how are
happy
you?
that you're here. Lee-Or Kabalik is the co-founder and CEO of Muze Art, and I'm sure we're going to have a fascinating talk, and I'm so happy that you're here with me. We're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and you're all invited to join and ask questions. And now we can start. How
Yeah,
did
thanks
you
for
co-
inviting me, Adi. First of all, I
Sure.
love your podcast. You have an
Oh,
amazing
thanks.
guest list
Thanks.
going back. Yeah, I've been following
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. So, how did you come up with the idea of merging music and video through generative AI? What really inspired you to do so?
Yeah, I think, in life, like everything has to do with context. So like nothing is born from a vacuum. So I think in some ways, Muse Art has like been 20 years in the making. I
Wow.
think my first job was working at a record store called Love Song in Eau de Charon. It was like this, it wasn't a chain, it was like just a small record shop. And that's where I worked for 4 years. And I studied musicology in high school. And then I went on to study video and animation at Bezalel. And after that, I worked as a video editor for like startups, and then I was a creative director at an agency doing video content. So in some ways, this is like a culmination of like everything together. But I think what really kind of kicked it off was that I was feeling like I was feeling like really burnt out. I was doing a lot of e-commerce and like marketing and like very kind of marketing focused kind of work in the corporate world. And I was feeling a little bit disillusioned. I was on maternity leave back in April 2022. And I guess you probably remember that DALI came out in beta then. And that kind of started the obsession. Like I just needed to understand how that works. It just seemed just so mind-blowingly fascinating to me. And I'm not a technological person by any means, but I just needed to understand the workings of it. And that kind of inspired me in terms of like the potential of taking, going from an image to a video and then combining different modalities to finally realize Muse Art.
Wow. I have to say
Yeah.
that it's really inspiring to think that first a woman entrepreneur, yeah, it's not that common. So first like
Yeah.
inspiring and second the fact that you took all your talents and knowledge and skills, experience into this venture, into this product. So tell us a bit what does it mean to use Muse Art?
So in Musart today, there's like, first of all, we're going to be launching in a few weeks, but
Ooh, good luck.
there's, yeah, it's really excited. It's been like, we've been working on this for the past year, trying to flesh out, the platform and the different features. But I think our kind of main kind of selling point is that you can input a song and we will analyze the lyrics and turn that into prompts, and we'll analyze the sound and we'll turn that into like camera movements and transitions and effects that create that audio reactive kind of feeling where the video is actually responding to what you're listening to. So it's that's like the basic functionality. But on top of that, we do have like different modalities of generative AI, right? So we have like text to animation, which we used to call text to video, but now that there's
Yeah.
actual text to video, I prefer to like call it what it is, which is text to animation. And we have you can create your own avatar, and you can also do video to video. So take an existing video and restylize it with generative AI. And of course, we're also working on video to video, which will be, sorry, text to video, true text to video, which we hope we'll be able to release in the next few
Yeah.
months.
When you're saying avatar, it means just to emphasize, I've seen it in your website that
Yeah.
I'm as an artist could integrate my own image into the videos, meaning I could be part of the videos, and my face and the way that I look on my clothes, whatever, would be part of the video.
Yeah, so it's actually based on a research paper that was released in Tel Aviv University, Dream Booth. And we just implemented that. So you basically train the AI on your own content, and then it learns to recreate that in different settings. So you can see yourself in a psychedelic video, or you can see yourself in a like black and white video. But the main point is like, how do we personalize that experience? How do we make generative AI something that's not templatey, but something that actually kind of resonates with, your brand, who you are, and what you're trying to convey. So you can do
Yeah.
that not just with an avatar, but we can also create like custom styles for you. So if you have like artwork or like, cover photos of, different graphic designs that you've already established as your brand, you can upload those, and we'll know how to create a style for you.
Yeah, because after all, I'm thinking about these people who create music. First, they love music. They like what they do. They're not always a visual person. That's one thing. And second, it's very expensive to create these kinds of video clips in order to promote your music online. And some of them even don't do it because it's so expensive and too complex for them, and they don't enjoy to do it as much as they do for the music. So, in that aspect, it will provide them an option to be creative in the visual side if they prefer to do it themselves, and not only in the audio side. Do you see it this way?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. First of all, I think that every artist kind of wants to create their music video, because I feel like every artist wants to represent themselves not only in the audio like level, but also in the visual level. We're all like very just visual people, and there's such an impact when you combine between the emotion that comes out when you combine video and music is just, it's just very compelling. It's just it kind of
Yeah.
grabs your attention. And I think the way that we are positioning ourselves is kind of like being the Canva for music videos. So it's for artists and also for record labels and A&R teams that really don't necessarily have prior editing skills. So we're trying to position ourselves in a way that we can service that market and help, these artists that really want to get a wider audience, but also help the fans. Because I don't know if you felt this on yourself, but there's like a really interesting trend. Like when I was working at the record store, that was when piracy came out, peer-to-peer piracy, and I could
Yeah.
feel like
Napster. Napster? What
yeah,
was it?
and Napster. It was back then. It was Napster and like all these kind
Yeah.
of like streaming torrent things, and you would download it. It would take like hours to download a song, and
Yeah.
then
And then you
you
found out it's
download a
not what you
virus.
wanted.
Exactly, it was so annoying. But the impact that it had on the music industry was like really tectonic, right? And then the response of the startup space to create like more regulated and respectful I guess options for streaming, that took a while for the music industry to kind of swallow and be like, we're on board with this. And I think that now what we're doing as like fans is that we're not actually streaming just the audio. We're actually 32% of us are actually streaming music videos. So the demand is insane. Like you have to, if you want to be an artist and you want to reach a wider audience, you have to have like a video content machine that's going to really create content at scale for, reels, TikTok, shorts, like all those places that you need to be both visually and audio. So the goal was, yeah, to service that market and kind of help bridge that gap.
And as someone who came from this industry, how do you see this impacting people who are, this is their profession, this is their business? What would they do to overcome or to be working with it? How do you see that impacting the creative video industry?
That's a really good question. I think that like going back to how the music industry responded to streaming, I feel like now they're catching on quite quickly, right? Like as an example of that, like I don't know if you remember, but back in I think it was May or April, there was the first AI generated song that used synthesized voices from the Drake and the Weekend, from
Yeah,
Drake and the Weekend.
yeah, yeah. I
And it
remember
was
that.
released by like an anonymous producer called Ghostwriter, and what that did was like that got everybody kind of in the music industry, including artists and including like the big record labels. And in this case, Universal, who was representing Drake and The Weeknd, they like really promptly issued a takedown. And they were like, we have to fight this, and we have to like, we have to like find a way to not enable this kind of usage of this talent, right? And by the way, like just like funnily enough, the song wasn't infringing on Universal because it was actually an original song. So when they went to YouTube and asked them to take it down, they had to have a different reason because it's not a copy of an existing song. So there isn't actually an infringement. So the way that they were able to do that was by saying, look, in the beginning of a song, there's a producer tag. The producer tag is something like a lot of producers do that. In the beginning of a song, they'll yell out their name, right?
Yeah,
And they'll be
right.
like, and it's like a sample of them. And so he actually used a producer tag that's from Drake and The Weeknd, and that was the reason why they could take it down.
Wow.
But then, yeah, but then they kind of rethought this, and they were like, we cannot be fighting this as a legal battle because we can't just like it's like a whack-a-mole kind of
Yeah, it's
situation where like
endless. It's endless.
it's gonna be endless. So these battles can't be fought that way. So it's interestingly enough, like last week, Google and Universal Music, who actually represent Drake and The Weeknd, they announced that Google was going to do an incubator, an AI music incubator, and their first partner is actually Universal. So I think that the way that it's going to impact it is like if you can't beat them, like monetize it, like in a way, like
Yeah.
let's monetize the threat instead of trying to fight it, like it was with streaming for so many years. Like they tried to fight it, and then when they finally just like found a way to regulate it and work with the technology and kind of give the people what they want, but in a way that respects the artist and the copyright, I think that's where we're going. And I think it's going to open up a whole new kind of revenue streams for artists, both big and small, both like indie, unrepresented, and also big artists that are represented by people like Universal and Warner.
Yeah. I think it reminds me of an artist that I heard that he had a song and somebody did a remix of the song and he really hated really hated it. I think it was Asaf, I forgot his name. In
Safa
any
Midan,
Avidan, yeah.
I
So
love
Asaf
him.
Avidan, yeah. So he
He's
has the
amazing.
song "One Day, Baby."
Mm,
So the remix was more successful than the original song. And I heard
yeah.
him when he said that they really hated it. He hated it. I think it was Sony Records. They told him you should not fight it because you earn more money if you allow this remix. And he said no at the beginning, and then he said, I have no way after I produce my music to stop anyone using what I've created. And in the end, he decided to take the money, and that's it.
Yeah, I think it's, you know what, it's not even just about the money, even though the money is really important here, right? Like, but I think it's also about, art is a conversation. And you don't like if you put out your art out there, it's because you want to have that conversation with your fans and with other people. Otherwise, you would just create it and listen to it for yourself. You wouldn't put it out there. And I think that when somebody starts riffing off you and covering you and remixing or tributing to you, I think that creates like a different perspective on what you originally created. And that's what's interesting because it's not just about the artist's perspective. It's also about how it impacts us as the listeners or as the viewers, and how we interact with it and how it makes us feel. And so I think that giving fans that kind of power to actually engage in that conversation is a really exciting thing.
Yeah. And I think another thing when we're thinking about there is no bad publicity, right? So if somebody is quoting you or using your music, it's good for your publicity in the end in most cases, especially when it's really hard to create this buzz. It's hard to reach more audience and to go through all the marketing, PR stuff in order to get there as an artist. Today, it's so hard. And there are some, as you said, like big corporates doing that for big artists, and smaller artists are finding it really hard in order to do so. So that could help them, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's like it's a really crowded Oh, I'm so sorry. It's the end
It's
of
okay.
August, and the babysitter is not having an
Ooh,
easy time with my
it's fine.
baby.
So maybe we'd have a new guest. It's a
Oh
new guest
yeah,
on the
she's
show.
she's definitely gonna be a star. Like I can already tell now. Like she's like, just give her a stage and she'll be.
How old is she?
She's 2. She's like a real
Ooh,
inspiration for what I'm doing now because I'm a very
really?
introverted person, like very introverted, and I remember like I was playing bass when I was like younger, and I started performing, and I realized like this is not for me. Like I do not want to be on stage. And then I think that now, like seeing her like this extroverted kind of like queen of like her own story, it did really kind of inspire me to come out of my shell and be like, I can be a founder. Like I can be the front of a company. I don't have to like um, to hide in the background.
Wow.
So yeah, so in a way, she's
I'm
the inspiration.
I'm so happy that you decide to do so. It's good for us and it's good for society in general. And people who are
Yeah.
introverts are they have so much to contribute, and sometimes they decide not to do so because they don't like the, you know, the lights of the stage, um, which is
Yeah.
really important.
I think that also like building a creative tool, like that's also some of my inspiration to building this because I feel like we all are very creative in our minds, right? And I
Right.
think that we're just realizing how creative we are. Like I think there was like up until like really recently there was like you're an artist with a capital A, and that's like
Yeah.
you're talented, and if you're not that skillful, or if somebody hasn't labeled you as talented, then you really have no way of expressing what's going on in your mind. And I think
Yeah.
that AI is really great at that, at just enabling creativity and kind of lowering the bar in terms of the amount of skills that you have to learn in the process, so you're able to just communicate yourself in a more compelling way, without all that process of actually kind of going through the learning process of
Yeah.
those gray skills.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's related to the fact that people think that they need to be perfect in what they're doing. Like a guitar player would say, somebody's playing guitar much better than me, or a singer, somebody's singing much more than better than me, or I know her songwriter was doing it much more better than me. And then you're like stuck in this stage of I know that I want to do it. I'm talented and I think I'm creative, but I don't have the belief I could do it as good as someone else. And then many people would decide I'm not going for this career, I'm not going for this direction, or they think it's too risky for them. Although you could see many people who are very successful artists and they don't have the best voice ever, or they don't play everything as the best as ever, but they are doing it. And maybe this could give them this small push that people sometimes need in order to take it. Like it's easier to create it, so you could use it. So you could use these tools in
For
order to do so.
sure. I think that we're getting to a point. I think like the aftermath of Corona in a way is that we're all just kind of like really thirsty for authentic kind of communication. And whether that's like, in music or in visual arts or just in text, like we just really are, it's resonating with us, the fact that we all have very different perspectives on truth, on life, on reality. And I think that now that we're a little bit more interested in that like authentic perspective, it's really liberating to give somebody a tool that kind of allows them to amplify that, without kind of going through like now you have to be a musician, or now you have to be an artist. Like you can just be doing this as something, as a way of expressing yourself, and a way of communicating. Like I can see a future where I don't know, this is just like guessing, right? But I can definitely see a future where, like, instead of sending each other, emojis or memes, you could be sending each other like these short clips of like, music and video together that kind of express an emotion or a moment. And, it's just a richer way of communicating.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying because what most people would think, they would say, okay, there are these people who are doing these clips or doing all the artwork, production, all of the work, and they would lose their job. But on the other way, there are people who don't have this way of this media and the way of using these tools or using these um, even talents because they don't have the money and they don't want to invest that much, and all of this sector, which is not like Tyler Swift and all of that, could really use something that she has and they don't have.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think that like if we look at the independent artists like section, it's really interesting to see the growth there because like as we've been seeing in the past few years where like you can just using production tools at home, not AI production tools, but just production tools at home,
Yeah,
and not having to have a record label backing you, you can see like this exponential growth, like 30% year over year in independent artist sector, and I think that's just gonna go and grow. You know, now that you have like much more creative freedom and you can essentially like if we see 130 songs going up to Spotify every day today, just imagine like like 2 years from now what that number is going to be like when production tools are going to be easier and more AI kind of focused. That number is going to grow exponentially. So
yeah,
I think what we're trying to do is say like how do you break through that noise, how do you give the people what you want but in a way that is kind of scalable and is not going to infringe on your like main kind of work, which is creating great music.
yeah. And I'm not that familiar with the music industry, but I could see it all around that things that were really hard to do, technology could give us a ability to do so. Like what you're doing right now, like a podcast, you need like a radio station in order to have all this equipment and
Yeah.
to do something online. And you have it in all other aspects of life. The things that were very domain specific are available, like writing. You could write a blog, you could write you have a YouTube channel instead of a TV show, so forth. So everything is democratized in this way. So music could do that, like what you have in Spotify that was like 10 years ago, I guess, could be elaborated into the visual world in that aspect. um, but what I'm thinking about, what does it mean that we have more diverse music available for us? Because right now there are these really big stars like Ed Sheeran
Yeah.
and Taylor Swift and so forth.
So for sure, like I think that it's kind of a trend that we've been seeing for the past few years is that fans are like coming from bottom up, like sorry, artists are coming like bottom up and they're really building a community of fans that are kind of um, that they're able to leverage upon that. And I think that as these tools become more available and as the UI UX becomes more kind of easy and accessible, I think we'll be seeing a lot of content from places that we wouldn't think of would necessarily come from there. And I think that's going to be really interesting. Like there's like this whole movement in Africa and like I think there's a lot of like disconnect between like Western music and music that comes from like other places in the world. And what seems to be like interesting to me is that like the it's not just about accessibility, it's also about really building something that's diverse enough to not just be like an algorithm kind of recommendation where you listen to the music where you are, like what I'm saying. So i
Yeah.
think i think we're about to see some really kind of diverse and interesting things happening in the world of music.
Yeah. What we're saying is, I just a thought that came to my mind. We're talking about the side of the creators, of the musicians, but it could be in the side of the consumers. If people listen to the music, they could get a different clip or a different video based on lots of their preferences, based on what their feelings are, based on the colors that they like, whatever. They could, each one could get his own dedicated, personalized video that currently we don't have that
Yeah,
available for
for
us.
sure. And I think that like recommendation media is based on that, right? Like that's the whole thing with TikTok as opposed to like Instagram, is that they're trying to fit the content to you rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
So I think that, there's a really great advantage. Like, we're working with some closed beta clients now, and one of the things that we're seeing is that the ability to create different versions of a music video, stylistically very different, and then upload them all at the same time, and not just for A/B testing, but also for just attracting different types of audiences, because you think your audience is here and that they like that, but then you realize that if you package it just a little bit differently, you can also reach a whole different audience, that would really like your content and your music, but they just weren't like the you weren't communicating with them in a way that resonated, so they weren't
Yeah.
you weren't reaching them. So that I think is interesting, just
Yeah. Right. So we have someone from LinkedIn, James Letham, and he says that AI seems to be democratizing the creative landscape with an open source, free or highly competitive paid tools. What do you think? Thanks, James, for your comment.
um I'm not sure if there's like is there a question there, or is it like a more of
No,
an
he,
observation?
yeah, this is how
I
he
I
sees
Yeah.
that. It could be an open source, a free, or a highly competitive paid tool. So there are lots of options for someone who's creating in this landscape.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think that, like, the difference is mainly, I kind of really have grown to just like love the open source community, because I feel like they're really, like, we're not, we can't compete with incumbents, right? We're not going to train our own models. It's not, it's not there.
Yeah,
So I feel like the open source community is just so rapidly kind of building upon each other. And I think one of our biggest strengths is the ability to kind of implement like these research papers pretty quickly, and then build kind of brand moats around that. I think that's like one of the bigger challenges as a startup in the generative space, is like how, like, the fact that we can implement that, means that somebody else can.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so, like, how do you build a moat around that, and how do you build a platform that in some ways is evergreen, because you're building like a structure where all these new like papers can come in and be implemented in a few weeks, but like you need the basic framework for that to happen, and to be able to create something that's modular enough and flexible enough to grow with the space. And this space is just insanely rapid, right? Like, there were things that I thought about, like, maybe 6 months ago, and I was like, yeah, that's probably like 18 to 24 months away. And then, like,
yeah,
the next week, something came
right.
out, and I was like, oh my god, I cannot believe this just happened. Like, I thought that was
Yeah,
this was
yeah.
a little bit further away. But yeah, so it's a blessing and a challenge, I guess.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, especially when you're an entrepreneur, there are always these ups and downs, and competitive landscape is changing so fast. But in this case, it's changing even faster. So it's really hard to catch up. So another question that James is asking, would you see fans remixing video content for music in a similar way that to how fans have remixed audio in the past?
Yeah, for sure. Like, that's one of the things. That's a really great question. That's like one of the things that the first things that our beta cohort clients kind of talked to us about. They were like, we would like to be able to have a platform where, like, we have snippets of music that we want to kind of extend their lives, right? Like, it can be a catalog of music of, for example, somebody that's no longer with us, like, like a Neil Sedaka or like a Frank Sinatra. Like, how do we take that music and give it some user generated content, like, so that the life of it just extends? And that's something that we're able to do for them, is actually allow the fans to play around with that, and use these different like starting off points to create something that can go really viral, and that has like advantages for them, because they're getting views and on their content, but it has also really great advantages for the record labels or the archive owners. And it's a $6 billion industry. It's a very under, like, I'm talking about UGC within the music industry. It's like
What is
15% of
UGC?
user generated content
Oh,
in the music industry. is about 15% of all the revenue, right? And it's
Wow.
completely like it's an under commercialized sector. Like we don't necessarily navigate it. We kind of more enjoy the benefits of when it does happen. It's really cool, but like there hasn't been a lot of thought, I think, into how do we actually kind of make that purposeful and navigate that so that fans can actually create that content more easily, so that we can get a wider reach. And especially today when we're talking about, PPC kind of not being as relevant anymore.
Yeah.
So the way to kind of be able to grow is through this kind of organic user generated
Mm.
content. So yeah, James, I really do believe that that's kind of the future of it, and I think it's going to be a win-win situation for both the fans and the artists and the record labels.
Yeah. Thanks, James, for your comments and questions. So, are there any limitations or challenges you've encountered in the realm of generative AI? We talked about the mode and the fact that you're using another tool, a third-party tool, in order to create the engine is not yours. So, what do you see as a limitation?
There's a lot, to be honest. Like I think, there are some technical limitations, and there's also, I think, creative limitations, right? So if I kind of want to maybe hone in on the technical side, I think that consistency is like still a big issue. And I think that that's why most tools that we see are more directed at like B2C, where there's not necessarily a specific business outcome that needs to be, exact. And also, there's no, I guess, expectation of like, things being automated. Like you're like, you kind of have to do it yourself manually. I think that when it comes to creating products for B2B, like we're creating this product not just for the musicians and the fans, we're creating it for record labels, for A&R teams, for music marketing agencies. So when you do that, you kind of have to think about being able to deliver something that's very consistent. And that can definitely be a challenge. And I also think that it's a challenge to kind of um, disregard the noise and the trends. Like there's a lot of trends going on within generative AI, and it's all very great and cute and fun. But these are things that like ultimately will be there for like, a month, 2 months, and then they'll go away. And like to try to build a feature, just to serve that and kind of, I feel like, that's where a lot of companies kind of don't necessarily prioritize like how much value am I giving. Like if I do this, like is that really what the artists need? Is that really what the record label needs, or is it just cool because it's being, you're seeing a lot of videos like that on Instagram or TikTok. So as I said, like I think quality of the outputs, like consistently, especially consistency, like especially with video, like the latent space is like a still not, 100%. It's like
Yeah.
95% there, but there's like still a bit of a gap to make it kind of production ready. Um, and trends. And I think maybe also I'd say like control over the outputs. I think that there's a real UI UX challenge when you're building an AI product, especially one that's referencing things that we already kind of know. So like when we're building the UI for this, like do we build it with like After Effects and Premiere in mind, like as a kind of reference point? Like do I need a timeline? Do I need a storyboard? Like how am I going to make this accessible to the user? But it's not just about referencing the previous generation. It's also about doing something that's going to serve like an AI focused or an AI forward product. So it's about inventing a new user experience that maybe is more purposeful for that. So that's also a challenge. How do we make it similar but also like more
Yeah.
forward thinking?
Yeah. So, I come from design. This is what I've done like in the last like 20 something years. And I have to say that I totally agree with you. I work with the several companies right now in generative AI. And the fact that you cannot really tune exactly what you want, especially for creative people who know exactly what they want, they know what the outcome that they're looking for. This is a challenge. And what you said about the UX, the user experience itself, it makes sense that people think about who is going to use it. So if we're talking someone who's coming from After Effect and he knows exactly what is the type of effect that he's looking for, what are the colors and everything, it will be very hard to take what they have and just swap it into something which is new. But if we're thinking about new users who did not use After Effects because it was so complex, hard to use, you need to have a very good experience in that. Um, then you could offer them what they're expecting to have. And they're less detailed oriented in that aspect. They're more like a holistic kind of users. So it depends on who's going to use it. And if we're talking about selling it to big corporates, what are they looking for? And maybe the fact that it's like really fast is more important than the fact it's really exactly what they need. So it depends on who's the user, of course. So we could
I
talk
think,
about it later.
yeah, definitely. First of all, for sure, I'll hit you up on that. But no, I think it's a challenge for all AI startups now, because like the balance between familiarity and innovation is a delicate one. So yeah, so we've put a lot of thought into how we're going to make it kind of user friendly and AI forward. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. There is another great idea from James. Thank you for being part of the conversation. If your
definitely.
clients are asking for these kinds of features, does it open up collaboration between music labels and branded content like Radiohead and Marvel, for example?
Yes, it definitely does. Wow, these are really great questions, James.
Thanks,
Let's
James.
talk.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that like in general, what's happening in the music industry in the past few years is that like everything's cross-platform in entertainment, right? So you have like music, films, and you're seeing like licensing between these different avenues, and it's becoming easier. It's just becoming easier to license even commercial music and not just production music. And um, I know a few startups that are new now that are doing that in Web3 and in Web2. Like licensing content is becoming so much easier. So as a result, like you can see it now with like the new Barbie movie, like the ability to kind of merge between these different mediums and kind of find different avenues for monetization are just growing and expanding. So I think we're at a really great crossroads in that sense of like it's about to happen, like it's starting to happen. We can already kind of see it happening. And so, now it's just a matter of being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
But
And
by
you
the way,
gave it,
that's like nothing new, right? Because like we had
yeah,
Andy Warhol who was, doing
the
music. Yeah, like
Campbell soup cans, right?
exactly. But then back then there weren't the monetization kind of like options that there are now. So
Yeah.
essentially, when Gucci made a dress with Andy Warhol's painting, for example, he didn't get anything out of it. And
Yeah.
now these days, if that were to happen again, that would be a win-win situation. So I
Yeah.
think that's the difference. Like that's what's going to enable like an open conversation between these different mediums, is that it needs to be a win-win situation.
Yes.
Um,
So Jamie is giving us an example. Film TV can advertise through the music videos of music used in their soundtrack, bringing different groups of fans together. So it's another example of using
yeah.
music in that sense. So thanks, James, again for being part. So, in your opinion, how does generative AI contribute to the overall artistic experience for both creative creators and the audience?
So I think we kind of touched about that, like, you know, like with what you talked about of having open conversations and about, engaging your fans in a new way, and creativity becoming like democratized and amplified. But I also think like in a simpler kind of, easier way to understand that is just like scalability and productivity. Like we're working with one of our closed beta clients is they have a ton of assets. They're like a music marketing agency. So they have to put out so much content, like especially like shorts, reels, all that kind of short form music centric content for like social media and recommendation media. Now for Spotify, because Spotify has integrated video into their feed,
Yeah,
not just like
right.
Canvas video, but actual like music videos.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
for them, like one of the things that we're doing now is like we're actually tracking that. We're tracking how much more content can they put out, and not just like how scalable and productive is this, but also how is it resonating with these different audience. Are people responding to it more, less, like better, like, or do they like it, do they, you know, feel engaged by it? So I think that's, you know, that's a big thing, because um, as you know, as boring as that sounds, if you're not able to scale what you do, you're really going to be limited by you know, the amount of audience and following that you can get.
Yeah. What comes to my mind when you're saying that is, in general, we see more content. It could be text, it could be images, it could be videos, music, whatever, created by AI, and of course it will be expanded and exponentially will grow. And the other side of it is like people consuming it. As I see it right now, people are consuming lots of information and media and all of that, but they still have 24 hours, 7 days a week. So the amount of content that is created is not equal to the consumer's need as I see it. What do you think about that?
I have to disagree on that. Like, I think that the demand is just phenomenal, and that's part of the problem, is that the demand is so phenomenal. Like YouTube just said, like, just had this blog about their music incubator. So one of the things that they said was that, like, there was I think it was 1.7 million views of videos related to generative AI tools on YouTube, right? And that
Mhm.
was one of the things that, like, kind of convinced them to be like, we need to get, you know, we need to address this, because there's a big demand for this. We need to make sure that in terms of like copyright and you know, digital manipulation and misattribution, we need to make sure that we can control this, because it is really, really high demand. So I think the demand is really out there. It's just a question of like, how are we going to meet that demand in a way that is respectful of the artists ultimately? Like, how do we do that without infringing?
Yeah.
So
So,
that's the challenge, I think, creating
yeah,
that framework.
I think it means that each one of the people viewing would see something which is more personal. So instead of
Yeah,
having one video for Tyler Swift, I don't know why I'm talking about this woman all the time. Maybe because
she's
my daughter
amazing.
is talking about her all the time. So let's say that right now she's creating a clip. I know, uh, 2 months in order to create this clip, tons of money. Instead of that, she would have like 10 versions of the same clip, and all their audience would listen to the same music in different clips. So it means it will
Yeah.
be more media, but in the same audience and time you consuming.
Yeah, again, I think that's like the beauty of recommendation media as opposed to social media, is that it knows how to deliver the right content to the right person. And so that's just, if you give it the material, if you give it that kind of variation, it will know how to, you know, bring you the right person. And the potential there is just like really big, because you can tap into these micro communities and these fans that you would have kind of probably have never looked at you, right? Like if I'm like, I'm 38, so like for me Taylor Swift is a little bit, you know, not my generation. but if
What can
but
I
if
say? Okay.
no, but I'm saying, like, if I were to see, like, when I look at her clips, like her, you know, mainstream clips, that doesn't resonate with me, for example. But I don't know, if she were to do something with like a more Peaky Blinders feel, you know, something that's not necessarily on brand for her, but it's just really much more approachable for me, then that would make me listen to what she has to say a little bit more. Because when I see like something that just doesn't seem like it's made for me, I'll just dismiss it. Like, I don't have time to, you know, kind of go deep into every single piece of content, right? I need it to resonate with me. So I think that that kind of empathy towards your potential fans is really important. It's not just about what I want to say and how I want to look. It's also about like, how can I make this more accessible for you, like for your perspective, like. I'm religious, so like there's a lot of content out there that is just like, I love, like, you know, rap music. I just love it. But I
Yeah.
will kind of probably never just, you know, have that, you know, playing in the background here, because like the visuals are just not something that I can, you know, that feel that I can connect with. But again, like if it was something that was more catered to my values and my tastes, then I think it would be kind of a different conversation.
Yeah. All through the conversation, we're talking about musicians wanting to create visual arts, but actually, there are lots of visual artists wanting to create things related to music, right?
Yeah.
Most of the people who are doing visual arts are not related to music. So it's connecting them as, I know, editors and creative people in general, visual people, into this realm of doing things for music. So I think that in that aspect, um, it's another opportunity for these kinds of people who did not do video clips and didn't do anything related to music to be more related to that domain, I guess.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think that, the numbers kind of support what you're saying, is that like audio based content, like visual content, videos that are like audio based, like they're very, very popular, right? Because it's easier to evoke emotion when you connect between like a song and a strong visual, right?
Yeah.
It's just two senses that kind of, they're more compelling when they work together. So it's no wonder that like 9 out of 10 of the most watched videos on YouTube are actually music videos. And
Ooh,
this is the type, yeah.
I didn't
we
know
we
that.
really, yeah. It's actually like that's one of the reasons that like YouTube is so pioneering this kind of incubator, is because they, like I think I read somewhere that like 85% of YouTube visitors are there for music. They're just streaming music, and that's why they opened, YouTube Music. And by the way, that's why you see like now TikTok is kind of doing the opposite, right? They opened like their own distribution, like they have something that's equivalent to Spotify, that they're beta
Mm,
testing now in South America and different places, and I think Australia. So that kind of blur between like visual and audio content is a really great opportunity for creators, content creators, to kind of, come in and kind of feed that demand. And I think that
yeah.
content creators that have a background in video and composition and understanding kind of that, I think the content that they create is going to be like hordes and magnitudes, more kind of compelling than just anything else, because they come with that background. They understand the workings, like the inner workings of video.
Yeah. What comes to my mind as we speak is that, for example, we have very good artists like Leonard Cohen, for example, who has very good words, and I really love him.
His
But I wouldn't
autobiography is
watch
right
him.
here behind me.
What you have behind you?
There's like two books here in my
Ooh,
studio. One is a Bob Dylan autobiography, Chronicles, and the other is I'm Your Man, the autobiography
ooh,
for Leonard Cohen. I just like,
wow,
whoa, yeah, those
wow.
are that's a
He's
pillar.
something.
Yeah,
Wow,
so
he's really good.
I think it's interesting that you bring him up, because like that's such a good example of how that conversation between fans and other artists and you as an artist can create something bigger than the original. Like if you think about it, like most of the songs that are the most popular, like Leonard Cohen songs, are actually cover songs, right? Like you
Yeah,
actually to Jeff Buckley's version of Hallelujah more than you
hallelujah.
do Leonard's, or you listen to Rufus Wainwright, or you listen to U2 doing Tower of Song. And I think that kind of tribute is something that is going to, and this is kind of going back to James's original question. I think that kind of tribute, like remixing, in like remixing like this, right? Because you can remix the audio,
Yeah,
you can remix the video. So doing that for the artists that you love, and seeing, how that can bring about like something where it's a win-win situation, both for that artist and for yourself as a content creator, I think that's going to be really interesting.
yeah. And he has this extraordinary ability to write words,
Yeah.
and the words are so significant in what he's doing. And I think that that's the reason, and maybe the stage that he was in the industry, but that's the reason that I don't think he dedicated lots of time, to do anything related to clips. It's mainly him like singing, right? When I go to look for songs on YouTube,
Yeah.
I wouldn't see it. I don't think he has lots of clips that maybe I'm not that of big of a fan. So,
No,
but
he really doesn't. You're right. I think one of the companies that we're talking about a partnership with to have archives for a lot of artists like Leonard Cohen. Actually, Leonard Cohen is one of them,
wow,
that have passed away. And how do you extend the life of those songs? How do you make sure that the next generation knows who Leonard Cohen is? And if the next generation, like we're seeing, 67% of Gen Zs are discovering new artists on TikTok. It's a very visual platform. Like Leonard Cohen is not going to be on TikTok, is he? Like he
I
will
don't
if
know. He
you
is.
he will he can't. Like first of all, he's dead.
No, but somebody
But
wants to make
I'm
money out
saying
of
like
his.
if somebody like if the record label or if the fans bring him back to life through video on TikTok, then the next generation, not just Gen Z, but like the ones after that, they're going to be exposed to that as well. And I think that extending these songs life is really important, because like we have a tendency to like run and but there's so much great content out there that was already created that we could kind of look at and get inspired from to create the next thing that we want to create, right? But you know, there's a saying in Hebrew called "Da me'ayin bata u'le'an ata olech." So like, know where you come from, like know the references. Like people remix stuff all the time today. Like in rap music, for example, you're remixing old Motown records, which is amazing. But like, you need to know that those old Motown records actually exist to be able to
Of
remix
course.
that or to sample
Yeah,
that. So I think,
sure.
yeah,
Exciting. So, looking
exciting.
ahead, what excites you most about the future possibilities of generative AI in the realm of music and visual arts?
Wow. Um, I'm gonna be a little bit like boring. I think what excites me is like making this Wild West kind of landscape a little bit less Wild West. Like I think that's gonna be the key, because if we're able to kind of regulate and protect and I think that within the realm of video, there's just a lot of like things that concern me. Like I think about deep fakes, and I think about like copyright infringement, and I think about plagiarism, and I think that what excites me the most is that we as builders and entrepreneurs are actually being very mindful of that. And I think that a lot of builders during like the social media age and during the internet age didn't know to be that mindful. Like they were just building. They went with the technology, and like they were like because they didn't really stop to think, where can this take us? Like, is there a possibility that this can take us to a bad place? And I think that the conversation now is so much more evolved, not just like from the side of the regulators, which is always to be expected, but also from us as people, just me and you, like the consumers of this, and also the creators of this, like the entrepreneurs. I think everybody that I'm talking to in this space is really interested in that, like in how do we build something responsibly, responsible AI, and not just see where it goes and hope for the best. So I think that excites me. I think innovation that ties in with responsibility can bring a lot of good.
Yeah, it reminds me of my last talk with the AI researcher, and he was really great. And he said that if you want to drive a racing car, you really need the power, but you need the brakes and the wheel in order to do so. Because when you're doing these rounds and you don't have the brakes, you just go off road. So I think it's very similar to what you're saying, and the ability to really know exactly what we want to achieve and go there, and not just try everything and see, oh, this is where we got to in the end.
Yeah, I think we're all just a little bit more humble, because I think that now that we've known like what the world was like before the internet and after the internet and before social media and after social media, we kind of recognize that you can't just run run fast and and think later,
And
and
break things. Run fast
yeah,
and break
exactly,
things.
right, exactly. You just can't do that, because you can, but like we don't want to do that, because in the end, this is the world that we have. Like, this is the culture that we're building. Like, if you can't build something responsibly, then I think you probably shouldn't be building it.
Yeah. This is a quote from Mark Zuckerberg like 10 years ago, I think. So, yeah. What's your number one tip for AI entrepreneurs today?
Wow, I think probably just like mental health. um no, honestly, because I feel like there's and this is true probably for like every startup, right? Like, it's just the roller coaster of like um being kind of highs and lows, and that are very like at the same time. But I think that within the realm of generative AI, I think that there's also like even more so. Like, it's just because things are moving so quickly, and because there's not a lot of clarity about where things are going, and things can also be like very sudden, and you have to respond really quickly. So I think that can create a situation where you can get very anxious, like as a
Yeah.
founder, or as like you're constantly like I remember like I've been doing this for like a year or a little bit more, and like for most of that time, like the first thing I do in the morning is like just go through all of the like to like the news feeds, and what happened, and like how does this impact me, and what do I need to do, and like it's
Yeah.
at some point I was like, you know what, like I just can't keep going at that pace, because at some point you just like things are gonna fall where they fall.
Yeah.
And you can't really know everything, right? You can't we don't really know where this is going and how
Yeah.
fast it's going to get there.
I really, what you just said, it really resonates with me because I'm creating an AI course in order to create these products. And at the beginning, I like each day I wanted to be up to date, and I read all these like news on Twitter and what's going on, and I read so much, and then I said, okay, just a minute, I want to read somewhere. If I read all this content and try to be up to date, I wouldn't understand what I want to teach people, what is the value I want to give people, because I'm always like driven by outside circumstances and what's going on outside. So I think
Yeah,
that sometimes we really need to go inside and see exactly what we want to create in order to get there. And this is much more important, especially if you're an entrepreneur, and take all these outside noise and try to focus on what you need, and not like try to it's like fire distinguishing all the time, like trying to fix everything all the time, instead of like really taking your company to the values, to the goals, to what you want to reach, which is the most important part. So I
I
totally
think
understand
I
that.
think I totally agree with you, and I think like maybe that to build upon that, like I just want to like the last thing that I say is like I think that if we're focused too much on the potential and the technological side, it's like sometimes you can get to a point where you're just like looking for you have like a solution, you're looking for a problem. And
Right.
I think that that's where that takes you a lot of the time, like when you're a little bit too much like up to date, it can take you to a point where you're not really focused on but who has a problem that I can solve.
Yeah.
And how big is that problem, and and that's like the basics of startups, right? But somehow I feel like sometimes in the AI generative AI space, like we kind of lose focus on that, like what is the actual problem that we're trying to solve, who is who is going to benefit from it, and how much value can I bring them. And I think maybe just to sum up, like I think there's like a great quote, I don't remember by who, but like some startup guy about a job to be done, like if you can only deliver like 10% of that job to be done that that person needs to do, then that's probably not going to be enough. You have to like think of a holistic solution. So if you're just building something that's going to solve just a fraction of somebody's problem, you might want to start thinking about how are you going to solve a bigger, the whole thing. So yeah, I think that's
Yeah. Okay, so we've done that, and first, before I ask you about where could people contact you and all of that, I want to tell you that at the beginning we said that you're a bit like anxious and
Introvert.
afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah, introvert, and you're not like into talking live
Yeah.
in this way. And I think it was so for me. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you, Lee-Or. So
Thank
that's
you
the most
so
important
much. I
thing.
did too.
And it's such an inspiring thing to see a woman, a religious woman usually, which
Yeah.
is very exceptional entrepreneur, doing something which is so up to date and seeing it in a very clear way of the future that she wants to build. So I thought that you were amazing. So thank you
Thank
for
you
being
so
with me.
much. Well,
Thank you.
you know what they say about like when you host somebody, like when you host somebody for dinner and the food comes out good. So you're always like, it's it's not me. It's like the people that like the visitors. They make the food good. So yeah. So I guess you just make me feel a little bit at ease.
Oh, thank you for that. So where could people really reach out to you and see Muse art?
Sure. So we have like a website, the Muse Art dot sorry, mymuse.art, and you can sign up for the wait list there. We'll be launching our beta in a few weeks, so feel free to sign up there. And you can also check us out on Instagram. There's, I think it's a Muze AI Art, and follow me on LinkedIn. And yeah,
Yeah.
let's keep in touch. James, I'm
Yeah.
looking at you.
James, you should.
Yeah, James, DM me. You seem to have like a lot of really interesting insights.
Yeah, and James thanks us for the interesting conversation. So he was
Yeah,
like, I felt like I'm co interviewing with James.
for
So thank you
sure.
for that. And thank you again for being my guest. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Lee-Or.
Likewise.
And
Thank
to
you
all of
so
you
much.
change, thank you. And to all of you change
Bye.
makers out there, thank you for joining us. If you want to find me, you know where to do so. And I'll see you next week with another innovative, insightful talk. See ya.